My name is Monet, and I'm here to talk about Mitski. More specifically, Mitski and the beauty of being in a space you don't belong. More specifically, Best American Girl by Mitski. According to All American Speakers, Mitski was born Mitsuki Laycock and is a Japanese American. Her mother is Japanese and her father is an American white man.
A white man? No!
As a child, her family frequently moved around, living in countries such as China, Malaysia. She attended State University of New York at Purchase's Conservatory of Music and self-released 2 albums while there, Lush and retired from SAD new career in business. She has gone on to have 3 more albums, Bury Me at Makeout Creek, Puberty 2, and Be the Cowboy. And I say all of this because, well, this is a school assignment and, you need background on your subject and whatever. And also because it really does give an insight into Mitski's music as a whole. But I'd like to start off by asking myself how many Asian people that I can think of that are in the alternative rock scene. There's the guy from Block Party, Matt Tong. There's System of a Down, but I'm not quite sure if they're Asian or not because I had some really conflicting results on Google about whether Armenian people are Asian. Freddie Mercury from Queen. I'm having a good time. Karen O from the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, and Yoko Ono. But she's really only known for her connection to John Lennon, and I really don't think people like her that much. Oh, also Baby Metal. So that's like 5, maybe 6 if we figure out if Armenians are Asian. That's not a lot. I can name like 45 white guys in rock music. And of course there's more, but I just didn't know that there were Asian people in those bands. Bands like Smashing Pumpkins, Van Halen, Soundgarden, Journey, but like 2007 Journey. And Cher is Armenian, but I don't really know if she counts, but I love Cher.
I'm Cher, bitch!
But I'm saying this because there's really isn't a lot of Asian representation in alternative rock music. And even when there is, I think it's kind of like hidden. I mean, I've been listening to Soundgarden and Smashing Pumpkins since I was a kid. And really the only people that I know are the white frontmen, Billy Corgan and Chris Cornell. But the Asian members of the band, no clue. You only really know the white man that's in the front. And to take it even further, there's barely even any Asian women in bands that I recognize. I mean, there's Karen O from the Yeah Yeah Yeahs and Yoko Ono and possibly Cher. We'll see. And, Baby Metal. So I did some tappy taps on my keyboard and I was able to find a few bands that are headed by Asian women in an article from Vice titled The Defiant Sound of Asian Women in Indie Rock by Erica Iwus. In there, she talks about Japanese Breakfast, Fanny, which has like a really weird music video that spends like 10 seconds looking at her feet, Emily's Sassy Line, Blonde Redhead, and of course, who I'm talking about today, Mitski. So you're probably like, okay, who cares? Why do I need to know about this? Well, if you'd calm down for a second, I can tell you. This article also talks about representation, which is the main part why I wanted to make this video. Representation of Asian people, especially Asian women, is not regularly seen in rock music. The music critic John Karamanaka told the New York Times in 2007 that, by and large, the music industry hasn't done a great job cultivating Asian American talent. And even though that article came out when I was like 7, I still think there's a lot of truth to it. It kind of feels like Mitski just burst onto this scene that really didn't have that many people that looked like her or came from her perspective. The rock scene is largely white. But with Mitski, I feel like she provides a really fresh outlook that is new to the mainstream. I think Mitski is special because she's giving us perspective that isn't really seen in rock music. So that brings us to Your Best American Girl. Billboard said in an article, Songs That Define the Decade, Mitski's Your Best American Girl by Caitlin Kelly, that Your Best American Girl is a love story about a couple from 2 different worlds that can't make their relationship work. But the article really doesn't go into how these worlds are different. But when you look at the music video, you kind of get a sense on what Mitski was trying to say. So Mitski is in front of this white guy, they're like feeling each other, they're like waving and stuff. But then this white woman just like comes out. She's in Coachella getup. She is very stereotypically American. And in the video, we start to see that this guy wants the vision of an American girl, and Mitski just ain't cutting it. But even when just looking at the song, we can see how different they are. Mitski writes, "You're the sun, you've never seen the night, and your mother wouldn't approve of how my mother raised me, but I do, I think I do." They're from two different backgrounds, one that he could never imagine. And despite trying to change herself into the best American girl by saying, "If I could, I'd be your little spoon," and "You're an all-American boy, I guess I couldn't help but trying to be your best American girl," it doesn't really work. In the video, she instead starts to kiss her own hand, and you know what? We've all been there. But because this is a class where we analyze pop culture, let's analyze this. What is Mitski trying to say in her song? So I think we could first talk about representation, which is defined by Stuart Hall as the ways in which meaning is given to the things depicted, that which stands in for something else. In the song, we hear the lines, "Your mother wouldn't approve of how my mother raised me." The representation of her background is not seen in American culture. She's different. She's ostracized from American culture because of who she is. And if we apply this to her in the music industry, we can see the same thing. She's one of the few Asian women in the alternative scene that's mainstream. She just isn't represented in the rock music scene. But who do we think represents rock music? Who do we think stands in for alternative music? White guys. So I think this song can be read in two ways. One being love that can't be saved because of a difference in background, and how she doesn't fit into the image of alternative musicians, but she tried to. So let's talk about signifiers and signified within the music video. Signifiers is the sign's physical form that is distinct from its meaning, while signified is being said through the signifier. Everyone can have different meanings for what something is because we have different perspectives. One signifier that I could find was the white girl in the Coachella getup. She is trying to signify the person that Mitski will never be, and also signifying the American standards that Mitski at one time tried to fit herself into. Another one that I found was when Mitski started to make out with her hand. To me, this could signify falling in love with herself, or letting go of the need to fit into the American standard. The last thing I want to talk about is how Mitski gained prominence. I have to read this one from the screen, but I believe that vernacular cultural hypothesis might have something to do with it. Vernacular cultural hypothesis is the idea that a small part of pop culture can start to create an even bigger waves within pop culture. What I think had happened is that after 2014, after her release of Bury Me at Makeout Creek, Mitski started to get, as the kids call it, clout. But it was small. It was nothing to the scale that she's at now. If you look to the Google Trends and search up the word Mitski, you see that she had gradual growth more around the times that she released her albums Puberty 2 and Be the Cowboy, having the most growth. But why the sudden surge in 2021? Easy. TikTok. More specifically, marginalized groups on TikTok. Her words spoke to them. They shared it more and more and more until it reached a more mainstream audience. White kids. There's even a TikTok that says, "I'm sorry, but if you're a cishet woman crying to the song How, you're literally the American Girl." Talking about Mitski's song, Best American Girl. But this is already longer than it needs to be. I've literally been speaking for 20 minutes and I have to fit this down into 8 minutes. I want to talk more, but I can't. But let me sum up why Best American Girl popped off. Because if you're in a marginalized group, specifically a person of color, more specifically a woman of color, you understand the feeling of not belonging. You understand the feeling of being in a place you don't belong. You understand that the American girl stereotype will never be you. And Mitski is trying to sing this in a way that really speaks to you. And you're able to find the beauty of being in a place you don't belong. Thank you.